I'm going to give you some insanely easy tips for free to allow you to lose weight, build muscle, and achieve life-changing results. So these tips that I'm about to give you have been used by me, on me, but also with the thousands of clients that I've helped over the last 10 years achieve life-changing results. So the tips I'm going to give you today, it's now your chance to apply them to yours. So probably like yourself, I was in a position where I was stuck, I was seeing little to no progress, and I started to become very frustrated. So it wasn't until I came across this new approach and I started to apply it to what I was doing was when I started to see real significant changes to my physique. Anything that can be measured can be managed, and this quote literally changed my life, and that's why I wanted to share it with you so it can literally change yours. It just opened my eyes to the world of tracking, because up to this point I'd been literally winging my fitness journey, and sadly on reflection my physique reflected the winging that I've been doing. So in this video I'm going to give you the 3 simple but most important factors that I learned to track getting into fitness. So I'm going to run through these in no particular order, but number 1, we're going to start off with training. So first and foremost, the most important thing that you can have here is a training program, because when I first started off I used to train intuitively. So rather than doing the things that were best for my physique, I ended up doing the things that I felt like doing, which was often dictated to by my day. Whether I'd woke up on the wrong side of the bed or I'd had a bad day at work, that dictated the way that my training sessions went. So that being said, do you think relying on the fact that hopefully we've woken up feeling good or we've had a good day at work, that's going to be the sole dictator and driver as to whether we train hard in the gym? I just think that leaves us too many variables when it comes to consistent, solid results that we want to build. So the point of this video is based on the fact that I'm assuming you guys are wanting to burn fat and lose weight. I'm going to show you how to put these into practice to make sure you achieve results. So like I mentioned at the start, number 1, having a training plan in place is going to be essential, because that's something that we can then be consistent with and something that's repeatable, which is going to be really important into the next phase of what we do. And this gives us the perfect environment to collect accurate data on what it is that we're doing. So in terms of what it is that we need to track, it's just about keeping it super simple. So all you need to look at is the exercises that you do, how many sets that you're doing, how many reps that you're able to achieve, and the weight that you've achieved doing so. If you can track this information into your next week of training, this information that you now have is literally going to be the vehicle and the driver for you to achieve these high-level results that you want to achieve in half the time. And the reason I emphasize the importance on this information that you now have in your hand, because next time you go into the gym, you're going to have a clear focus and a clear purpose of what it is that you need to achieve. Because prior to this, again, if you're allowing yourself to go into the gym based on emotion after a poor day's work, the information that you have now logged and tracked, ready to perform and outbeat, it holds 0 emotion. So it doesn't care if you've had a bad day, it doesn't care if you've had an argument with your girlfriend or your friends or whatever it may be. It is there to hold you solidly accountable to straight facts. So now you have this information present as you head into the gym. As you head over to the machine itself, you have a very clear target of what it is that you need to do. And by knowing what you need to do and what you need to achieve and what you need to beat the previous week's score, it's going to allow you to go into that session and that set itself just with a higher level of concentration. You're going to be less likely to be playing on your phone, having conversations, and just ultimately taking our eye off the ball. Again, we're looking at achieving the highest level of results, so therefore we need to have the highest level of focus. So imagine your goal was to grow your chest, or maybe as a female looking to grow your glutes. Imagine if you're going into your sessions first and foremost without any data whatsoever. It's going to be impossible for us to know what to do, what to improve, and how to work. But say we have now started to track and we are lifting 20 kilos for potentially 10 reps, which is great. So imagine now you're tracking, you're going into your sessions and you're beating and you're progressing, you're focused, you're driven, and then over time you get to a position whereby you're lifting 100 kilos for the same 10 reps. Well, ultimately the stimulus that's going to be created from that additional load is going to have a huge impact on the growth of the muscle alone. But alternatively, on top of that as well, if we're looking to really drive into a fat loss phase, imagine the huge, significant amount of calorie difference between those 2 sets. So ultimately we're having 2 wins here. We're looking to grow and develop the muscle that we're trying to grow, but secondly, our output has increased by lifting the higher loads that we have. And none of that could have been done without having that initial understanding of the data that we initially tracked. So this is why I can't emphasize enough the importance of tracking, because once I started to factor this in is again when I started to see results. And this leads me into my final point when it comes to tracking, because one of the biggest drivers or one of the biggest obstacles I see when it comes to people sticking at their fitness journey is motivation. So by applying the tracking system that we have on a daily basis now, as you head into the gym, you have this goal, you have this purpose, you have this focus, you're going in there with a drive that we've not had before. Number 1, you're more motivated to be there, to be able to progress on the things that we've done previously. But then second to that, if you are able to progress all the lifts that you have within your training, you're going to come out of that session feeling, of course, challenged, but also way more fulfilled. So what you're seeing here is, yeah, there's going to be elements of you being tired, but listen, you're going to be in way better shape for it. So number 2, nutrition. And like I mentioned to you guys before, there's no particular order on these. They are all as important as each other. So when it comes to nutrition, like I've mentioned to you previously in other videos, that is calories in versus calories out. And now we've discussed and we've covered the output version of things. I really want to cover the bases now of the calories in. So again, very similar to the training, before I knew anything about anything, I was just training and eating and I was hoping for the best. But with that hope was reflected in the results that I was seeing. Hence, I'm really, really big on applying all these strategies into your own fitness journey. So when I first started to try and apply nutrition to my journey itself, I was just trying to eat healthy with no real clear or understanding of the calories that were actually truly going in. And as we know, at times you can overeat these healthy foods. So for me, it was difficult when it came to a position where maybe I hit a plateau because I had no information tracked. It was very difficult for me to know what was working and what wasn't working, and that's why tracking is so important. So again, I didn't know any difference. When it came to the food side of things, I was not only training, but I was eating intuitively. So some days I would eat, it was very dependent on if I was hungry or if I wasn't hungry. These things would fluctuate far too much. And again, knowing what I know now, that was probably part of the reason as to why I wasn't seeing results. And this was just down to the initial advice that I was exposed to when getting into it, which was like, it's okay, you can eat whatever you want as long as it's healthy. And I quite quickly found out that this was not the case. So that's when, after maybe 4 or 5 years of being frustrated and being stuck and couldn't get past my own barriers, is when I started to reach out to someone, and they quite quickly showed me that by tracking and understanding this was going to allow me to break through that current ceiling that I currently had. So one thing that I was made of very quickly was the fact that everything that you put in your mouth has calories. Whether it be the odd biscuit out for coffee, whether it be the sausage you put on your food, it literally is everything that goes through your mouth is containing of calories. And again, that's probably one of the reasons why I wasn't seeing the weight loss I wanted to see as quickly as I would like to have seen it. And this way of thinking wasn't just plucked out of the air. It was from research I'd initially done online, but also I'd done things earlier on, such as Weight Watchers. So within the Weight Watchers diet, at the time, the ethos was that you could have certain foods had 0 points because they were deemed to be healthy. And I think that's where my mindset came from. So at the time, it was things like chicken had 0 points. So you can eat as much chicken as you possibly want. I think the idea behind that was that you're going to struggle to overeat on chicken. And maybe in this case, I was the outlier because I definitely could. But again, this has just reminded me now that actually, as we know, chicken still has calories. So therefore, no matter what the food was or how healthy it may be, it was still taking me over my daily calorie intake. Therefore, that's why I wasn't losing weight. So that's why I want to emphasize the importance of being able to track these things. So if I'd have tracked things from earlier on in that situation, I would have been able to pick this up really, really quickly. It just took me a lot longer to realize this when I started to plateau. And like I mentioned, I eventually reached out. So the idea of tracking is going to teach you one or two things quickly. By tracking the foods that you're eating, you're going to see some of the things that are potentially holding you back that you didn't even realize you're eating. Like I mentioned, the additional biscuit here and there, or the splashes of milk, all these things that you didn't realize you were doing and they're potentially habitual, they're going to be highlighted really quickly. And then secondly to that, by gathering and understanding, you're going to gain control. So therefore you can start to make adjustments and changes when you do hit plateaus. Again, if you're unsure of what's going in, how are you going to know what to change when the time is right to do so? So write everything down that you've eaten that day, to the point of drinks and diet drinks and chewing gum, literally everything. And this is really important that you're honest in this situation. It's a case of just, I would call it almost like nutritional undressing yourself. Write everything down and be vulnerable. And then again, it's going to highlight really quickly maybe some of the areas you did not realize that you were doing. Or secondly to that, find yourself using one of the online fitness apps where you can actually scan barcodes. It makes it really easy, really simple. And again, but just the key, ultimately what you're trying to get from this is just make sure you have a clear vision of what it is that you're doing. And therefore from there, you can make the changes that need to be changed really, really quickly. But like I mentioned, without tracking it initially, that's going to be impossible. Or if you were anything like me at the time, you did not have the prior knowledge, or even having things written down for you is going to be of no help, I reached out to someone. So what that then allowed me to do was make the progress that I was so desperate to make, because I was getting frustrated, but I could also learn on the job. So what I did is I outsourced that to someone else who allowed me to make the improvements that I wanted to make. They structured things out in a way that was easy for me to follow. So I was still making progress whilst learning, because by that point, 4 or 5 years in, I was really sick of wasting time. So there's 2 other things that I would start to track as of today if you are serious about getting results. And that leads us into my last one. Last but not least, and this is just as important as anything, was steps. I had, up to this point, I had no idea of again, this is another form of output as to how much I was doing. So therefore I needed to adjust anything. I didn't know what I was adjusting from. So when it comes to steps, this is what we call NEAT. So it's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that is things that are not directly exercise or cardio. They're just kind of movement through the day. It's ultimately just being alive. The calories that you're going to burn just from being alive. So this is probably actually the biggest burner of calories throughout your whole day. Of course, you're going to train super hard and you probably think that's the time where you're burning all these calories. Well, listen, you've got another 23 hours a day as to where you're going to be moving. So therefore this movement, this output is more important than anything. So if we can track this really simply and it's going to help us achieve our results, then why would you not? So firstly, when it comes to tracking something, we kind of need something to gauge this off. So a really, really simple term that we can work off is 10,000 steps. This just gives us a target first and foremost, very, very similar to how we had in our training. It creates urgency towards something, but it also creates accountability for those steps that need to be achieved on a daily basis. So like everything that we've spoken about today, when it comes to tracking and logging our data, this is absolutely no different. What it's going to allow us to do is have quantifiable information for us to work off. It's going to remove all variables and it's going to leave nothing to chance. So when it comes to the steps themselves, listen, 10,000 steps is 10,000 steps. There is no gray areas, if, buts, or maybes. Did you hit it? Yes or no? And again, like I mentioned with all the other points that I've gone through, I'm going to tell you what they are, how they work, but more importantly, how do you then start to implement them into your day-to-day life? So to simplify the step scenario, because some of us are going to struggle to factor them in, so I just factor in really, really simple things. For example, you could make sure that we commit to using the stairs. I think this is big because not only is it going to help increase your output, but also you're showing a commitment and are willing to do more. Secondly to that, a real simple tip is that we could park a little bit further away at the supermarket. Therefore, naturally, you're going to start to accumulate more steps on a day-to-day basis, ultimately by accident long term. And then lastly, on top of that, you could just do things like commit yourself to doing an extra 15 minutes on the treadmill after one of your workouts. Maybe start to incorporate that in as part of your routine, so therefore it doesn't feel like too much of a chore. And again, these things probably seem really simple. They don't seem like much, but if you compound them over periods of time, they're going to have a huge impact on your weight loss. And just to prove my point on that, when I've worked with people in the past and, we've implemented step structures here to help them improve and lose further weight, they might have been struggling with this. So again, we've implemented those little tips we've kind of given there, but also on top of that added additional accountability. For example, in one case whereby I asked this person to send me over a screenshot of their Apple Watch or their Fitbit, whatever it may be, of a night time to prove that they'd hit their 10,000 steps. Has added additional accountability. And what would happen is they sort of say to me at the end of the week, listen, George, I was sat on the couch at 8,000 and I was, I would have just sat there and stayed there previously and not achieved the 10,000 that we'd sent out. And that might seem, again, really, really small, really, really minuscule, but imagine over sort of 2,000, so we've missed out by 2,000. So then imagine by sort of 7 days, that's an additional 14,000 steps. 2,000 doesn't seem like much, but even just by compounding it over a week, that equals 14,000 steps, which is going to be the difference between you losing weight and not. So then imagine that, maths is not my forte, but imagine that by a month and a year, and it's all these little tiny stepping stones, which are the difference as to why you are where you are right now and not where you want to be. So as you can see, the secrets to achieving life-changing results aren't crazy overcomplicated, they aren't crazy overwhelming, but they are incredibly important for us to start applying. The key here and the point of what I'm trying to achieve is, firstly, it's knowing them, but it's also framing it in a way that we can understand it to therefore transition it into our own way of life really, really simply, really, really quickly, so you can start to see the results that you want to see as fast as possible. So as you can see, the secret to life-changing results doesn't have to be crazy overcomplicated. It doesn't have to be crazy overwhelming. The fact of the matter is, it's just knowing what you need to do and then being able to frame it in a way that you understand, in a way that you can apply it and transition it into your own life. So to summarize kind of what we've spoken about today and the importance of is, number one, it is tracking and logging your data. Anything that can be measured can be managed. And the things that I would implement, 3 simple things to start tracking from today is your training, your nutrition, and then your output through steps. So as per my vision, my goal was to allow you guys to finally start to achieve the results you want to achieve. So hopefully you found this content useful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.